James's rescue. James often grumbled that he had too much shunting to do. "How can I be expected to see to everything?" he would grunt. "Here, there, and everywhere. I shall wear my wheels out, and what would the Fat Controller do then?" Henry and Gordon didn't take much notice. They knew James, and had heard all before. "It's easy enough to bustle about looking busy," they said. "It's the real work you do that counts." One day Edward was at the shed. While he was there, a message came saying that a train of trucks loaded with stone blocks was waiting at his own station. He was to fetch it and bring the trucks to the harbor for loading onto ships. James looked envious, and Edward felt sorry for him. "Why don't you go get the trucks?" he suggested. "There'll be a nice change for you. I'll stay here and shunt in the yard." The drivers agreed, and James puffed away. This is nice, he said happily to himself as he sped along the rails. But it didn't stay nice for long. Trucks are dirty, rude things, always on the lookout for an engine they can be spiteful to. They had heard stories about James, and when they saw him backing towards them, they cheered loudly. "Look!" they cried rudely. "It's Bootlace James! Now we'll have some fun. Bootlace won't help today." They sniggered to each other and made a plan. Now, stone is heavy, so the load was bad enough without the trucks making it worse. But the trucks didn't care about that. They tried all sorts of tricks. They slipped their brakes on so that James had a great difficulty starting. Then they crept close behind each other and would stop one by one so that a string of jerks would run along the train. "They'll break a coupling if they're not careful," said James crossly. But he was determined not to be beaten. Slowly he dragged the noisy trucks to the harbor and pushed them onto the wharf. Then he went warily back to the yard for some quiet shunting. Well, chuckled Gordon. "Here's James, come back after doing some proper work. I expect he needs a rest now." James pretended he hadn't heard. Old Groaner. James was feeling sorry for himself. "I'm getting old," he grumbled. "I can't get about like I used to. It's all right for you younger ones, but my wheels are getting stiff." Edward, Gordon, and Henry had all been on the Fat Controller's railway longer than James, but they didn't say so. At last, Henry tired of James's complaints. "Poor old Groaner," he said. "It's no use you just sitting there moaning. Why don't you tell the Fat Controller that you're past it?" But James didn't like the idea. Not all old engines, so he had heard, were preserved. Some, they said, were sold for scrap. James shuddered. They decided not to take a chance with it. The night goods left the big station at midnight. Usually one of the Fat Controller's diesel engines pulled it, but one was away and the other was being mended. James had to take it instead, and he grumbled like anything. "All this extra shunting," he snorted indignantly. 2 days later an inspector came to the shed. "People live near the yard are complaining," he said. "They say there's a sort of groaning noise which keeps them awake." "I don't remember hearing anything," said James's driver. "We were there until midnight." "That's right," agreed the inspector. "That's when they say it stopped." "It's probably only James, moaning and groaning about extra shunting," suggested Henry. "Oh, shut up," retorted James. "If you had to shunt at night, you'd moan and groan louder than everybody." That night, James's driver and fireman listened carefully. "It is you, James," they said at last. "Your brake blocks aren't holding your wheels properly, and when they rub against each other, they make a groaning sound." The Fat Controller acted at once. "I can't have complaints about my railway," he ordered. "Tell Donald and Douglas to take turns with the midnight goods until the diesels come back. James must have his brakes seen to at once." James was pleased not to have to pull the night train, but his nickname of Old Groaner stuck for several weeks afterwards. He even began to feel that it might have been better to be doing the shunting.